Hey everybody, Mark from Mark's Home Hobbies here. I had a subscriber, RC Odyssey, asked me to do a video about taking apart the K969 to upgrade to a brushless motor system. So I'm happy to oblige. Okay, first thing we want to do here is we're going to want to take out the servo. It's pretty easy to do. Just flip the car over and there's 3 little Phillips screwdriver support bracket there, and then take the servo out. Just pops right off. Put that over there. Put that over there. And I can take the time and show you this little servo horn that's on here. It's a little microscopic tiny little servo horn. I may opt to put a longer piece on there at some point, maybe in another video. Now that we have that off, it's really only 2 screws that really hold it on from this point, or 3 screws, I'm sorry. No, 2, that's right. These ones right here. We'll take those out. Be careful and don't lose them. Yep, and then the motor should just lift right off, but it won't, because it's you'll find that take the motor mount off, the motor is not going to come off because the pinion gear is bigger than the hole. So what we do is we get a nice little flathead jeweler's screwdriver and insert it right here, and make sure you push the blade all the way through, and then just lift on each side very carefully. Yep. Just pry it up on all the edges until you can feel that it's loose. Just take your time and it'll come loose. It feels like it's on there very, very good, but if you just take your time, you can work it right off. There's your motor mount right there. Here's your old motor right here. We'll put that over here. Now what we have is bare chassis there. Be careful you don't lose that little bearing that's on that gear shaft there, because I doubt you'll ever be able to find one that's that small ever again. So now, what we probably should do at this point is mount the motor up. So you want to start your screws a little bit there. Push them through. Just a little. Then you want to line up your motor, the correct position you want to have it. And you should feel the screws kind of set up there a little bit. And what you want to do is just okay. And that's what the motor should look like right there. And there's your solder points right there. We'll be using those shortly. Show you how to do that. Put your pinion gear on. What I always do is put the least beat up end on there. There really is no flat. So whatever you do, don't try to push it on without supporting this end, because you'll push this end of the motor right out, which probably won't hurt it at all if you can push it back in, but probably not the best thing to do for your brand new electric motor. Okay, so that part's done. What we're going to need to do is change the battery plug out there, and we're going to need to solder these wires up to the motor. So let's do that. get my soldering iron. Alright, so here's a soldering iron right here, in case you don't know what that is. It's decent, it's a vellum and adjustable. And this here is solder cleaning ball. So what you want to do before you start soldering is just kind of press into that ball so you can see that the tip is nice and shiny there. Then you want to take your pal Mr. Solder and just hit them one time just with a little dot before you start. What we're going to do first is we're going to tin the wires. So we're going to take the soldering tip and place it on the wire. And we're going to just use a little bit of solder on there just to get some solder onto the wire. And we're also going to tin these three for the motor here. And just make sure you got enough solder on there to to bind the wires together. Make good initial contact, when you're soldering it. And then clean your tip off after you're done with it. Okay. And just strip those wires off. Tip there. A little bit of solder on there. And let's tin the edges of these wires right here. The ends, I should say. Alright, clean the tip off. We're good. Okay, now the most important thing we can do on here is make sure everything is good. We've got some solder on there. Okay. Now you want to do this. This is a very important part before you solder. Make sure you put your heat shrink on there, because if you don't, it's going to be hard to put it on after you solder. So make sure you got your heat shrink tubing ready to go. Put it on. Move it all the way down to the end so the heat of the wire doesn't affect it when you're soldering. What I like to do is put the wires into a position where I know I can solder them easily. So we're going to opt for this position right here. Clean your tip off. Alright, now you can see we have two fairly good solder joints, although this one is not so good. I think what we'll do is we'll just press that down with the good old needle nose there. And we'll call it good. Looks like plenty of solder on there to me. So now we can move those up, heat shrink tubes up there, aside for a moment. Now what we really have to do is, I'm going to show you this, but I don't know how much you're going to be able to see of it, but there's three little terminals right there, marked A, B, and C, little brass terminals there. I think you can see them. So what we're going to want to do is place some solder carefully into the groove of each one of those. So line it up there. Make sure your soldering iron's on high heat for this too. So it will take some heat. But try not to leave it on there for too long because you'll melt the plastic underneath. So what we want to do is touch it in there, apply a little solder. Just a very little bit. Not that last one. Alright. Now as you can see, or if you can't see, I'm trying to get it in the light so you can see it here. Each one of those little grooves has some solder in it there. I think you can see it there. Each one has a little bit of solder in there. So now the fun part comes. You're going to see that the wires are labeled C, B, and A. So we're going to start out with C. So we'll find the letter C, which happens to be this far terminal over here. So if we take our C and we line up our motor like this, remember, you don't want to leave that on there for too long because you'll melt the little plastic insulators on the motor. So what you do is lay the wire into the brass channel with the solder and then put the soldering tip right on top of the wire with the solder on that you put on there for the tinning. And in 2 seconds it should melt and then you can release. So this is not a job that takes a lot of time. It just takes a little bit of dexterity to hold the wire right in place. So just like that, just a touch. So now you can see we have A, B, and C all wired up properly, just like that. Real nice. Turned out really good. So you can see that that's, 5 minutes of preparation is all you really need there. And just check and make sure that you've got a good joint on each one. I think we're good. They feel pretty good and pretty strong. We're done soldering. Yeah. So that was pretty easy, pretty quick. Is it hot today or is it just me? I'm in Michigan, southern Michigan, and it feels like it's about 80 degrees in here. Okay, now on to the next thing. And just check and make sure that your bearing is seated all the way into the motor mount there before you put the screws in. So that looks pretty good. Bearing looks like it's in. The hole should tighten those boys up. There we go. And now, once we check the play on the motor, which needs to come over just a little bit, so we'll just kind of give it a little oomph that way. Check it again. That feels pretty good. Get that top motor mount there. Top motor mount screw, I should say. Yeah, just check the gear lash and make sure that it's not too tight or too loose, because this is nylon that it's mounting to the motor, so there is a little bit of give. You can see I'm pushing on it a little bit and there is a little give. So just make sure that your gear lash is not too tight. The gears have a little bit of play. That feels real good. Okay. That part is done. Let's see how it looks. Ooh, it looks pretty. It's red. It matches the rest of the car. Wow. I like that. Me likey.